Tom is in. Hi, Tom. So,
Um,
besides the,
Okay, we're live.
okay,
all right, so we're going to begin then?
just in 1 second.
Sure.
For those of you that have just signed into the meeting, if you could please mute yourself for the time being, we would appreciate it. Okay, Vic.
Okay. All right, so we're going to begin the meeting, everyone. Welcome. This is the Town of Somers Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is January 19, 2021. Denise, would you please take the roll?
Ms. DiPolito,
Here.
Mr. Gio?
Here.
Mr. Lansky,
Here.
Mr. Newman,
Here.
Chairman Canestra.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Please keep in mind that this is a public meeting, and everybody who is signed on, if you'd like to speak during the meeting, when the particular case is called, we will certainly allow you to do so. So just be patient. We only have 2 items on the agenda this evening. Paul, are we able to do the pledge this evening?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so first, I would ask everyone that we do the Pledge of Allegiance as we normally start our meetings. I'll just wait for the flag to come up. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the
The
flag
flag of the United States of America
and
And
to
to
the
the
republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
justice
liberty
and
and
justice for all.
justice for all.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So we're going to go right to the first item on the agenda this evening. This is the application of Anthony and Giuseppe Carino. This is an application for an special exception use permit for an accessory apartment in a basement of an existing one-family dwelling in an R40 residential district at 28 Lakeview Drive, Yorktown Heights. Is someone here this evening to represent the applicant?
Yes.
John, if you could speak louder.
Yes.
Thank-
I'm here.
Okay, and you are, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
could you give me your full name and address, please?
John Caro, 1646 Winona Trail, Mohegan Lake, New York.
Okay, and how are you related to the applicant?
I'm representing them. I'm the architect.
You're the architect, okay, for the applicant. All right, can you briefly describe the application before us and what you're requesting?
Well, it's an existing basement area where we're going to be converting the garage into a bedroom and a living room, and we're going to be adding to that. Actually, not adding anything to it. The property itself, I think, is large enough to support the apartment. There's certainly enough parking spaces, and it's basically for their own use. It's not for instance, an accessory apartment like you would have for rental.
Okay. So the idea here is to have family members reside in the apartment?
Well, Mr. and Mrs. Carino are part-time in Florida and part-time here in Somers, and their daughter will be living in the upstairs part of the house. And when they come home from Florida, for instance, they'll be living in the basement apartment so that they're not disrupting their other child's life
Okay.
all the time.
I see from the site plan, the lot is approximately 60,000 square feet.
That's correct.
All right, so it does meet the minimum of 40,000 square feet. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Can you tell me when the principal dwelling was built?
You know, I do have a drawing of that, I think, but I don't know that the date was on it. I think it was built in the 70s.
Yeah, I think it was even built in the early 80s.
Okay. Because one of the requirements for an accessory apartment is that the building had to be constructed or issued a building permit prior to April 1, 1992. And
Okay.
since this is a new application, that's why I'm inquiring as to it. So are you representing to us that the building was built before April 1, 1992?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, the other thing too, Victor, is the 800 square feet, if I recall correctly, for
I'm sorry,
How many
Ernie.
square feet is there?
Yeah, how many square feet is the apartment?
782.
Okay. Accessory apartments have to be between 300 and 800 square feet, so that would be,
It's 784, I'm sorry.
okay, so that would fall within the parameters. The area is unfinished right now. The apartment has not been constructed yet.
Well, there is a finished family room down there, and the area where the stairway is, and the closets, and the entrance to the utility room are all already built, if you will. I mean, they're sheetrock walls and ceilings. The garage itself is sheetrocked, but it's not occupied in any way as a usable space except for automobiles right now.
I assume there's two methods of egress from the space that you're proposing?
Yeah, well, there would be a door directly out to the driveway grade on the driveway side of the house. There's a second means of egress window in the bedroom, and there is a stairway that goes up to the front door.
Okay.
So there are two ways out of the apartment. There's also a door to the backyard directly from the kitchen, what will be the kitchen.
Just wanted to speak to my building inspector for a minute. Tom, have you been out there to take a look at the property at all yet, or not yet?
Yes, I was. I met with Ms. Carino.
Okay. Okay. Do you see any other issues or anything that we should be concerned about at this time?
No, it seems to me that everything is pretty much in compliance with the requirements of the code.
Okay. One last thing I just want to make mention of, the code does require that approval of the proposed method and adequacy of water supply and sewage disposal shall be obtained from the Westchester County Department of Health and shall be further subject to engineering review by the town. Has there been any Department of Health review of adding this extra bedroom and apartment to the property?
There has not as of yet.
Okay. So that would be a condition because it says prior to the issuance of a building permit for the establishment of the accessory apartment in a principal dwelling, approval of the, from the Westchester County Department of Health has to be obtained. That's
Yeah,
in,
I would.
Yeah.
I would refer the applicant prior to issuing a building permit to get a sign off from the health department.
okay. And in case the applicant is wondering, that's code section 170-70, section H.
Right. I think as part of the application, we also showed one of the bedrooms being disabled on the second floor so that it becomes part of the master suite, so that it would be the same number of bedrooms that it is now, which is 4.
Okay, so you're eliminating one bedroom and adding one bedroom.
That's correct.
Okay, so that should definitely ease the approval of Department of Health's issuance here.
Okay.
Board members have other questions of the applicant at this time?
No, I do not.
Okay. Does the applicant wish to state anything further before I go to the public?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so why don't we put this out to the public? Is there anybody online with us now or anybody who wishes to call in, in regard to this application? We're willing to hear any comments, questions, pro or con. Anybody online right now who'd like to speak in regard to this application? Paul, can you also put up the phone numbers online so that anybody who may want to call in can do so? As mentioned, keep in mind that this is a public meeting, so anybody willing you are able to comment in regard to these applications. Paul, are you able to put the phone numbers online? Denise, have we lost Paul?
Paul, somebody,
Yeah, I don't see, I see some lines, but I don't know if I still have Paul here.
They turned over the hosting of the meeting to me, so
Mhm.
they may have had to handle something else. I have no calls coming in, so I think we're good.
Okay. Okay, so last call to the public. Nobody has any comments? Okay. Going to board members, any further comments or questions to the applicant? Any discussion that we have to have?
I'll just mention that in a couple of online real estate listings, it shows year built as 1989.
Okay. Okay. Before our 1992 deadline. Okay. All right. So does the applicant have any further comments? Any other issues before the board votes on this matter?
No.
No. Okay. I'll entertain a motion for the type of action before we vote on acceptance or denial. Can we have a motion for the type of action?
I'll make a motion,
Motion,
type
type
2.
2.
Second,
Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can we have a motion as to the acceptance or denial of the application? I would say if we are going to make a motion for acceptance, I would of course want to condition the acceptance upon getting the Board of Health approval.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to grant the application conditioned on Board of Health approval.
Second,
Second.
Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yep. Congratulations. Your application has been granted. Keep in mind that the special exception use permit is applicable for 7 years, and then you'd have to come back before the board for renewal. Okay?
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Night, John.
Good night.
The next item we have on the agenda this evening
Congratulations.
is that of Albert and Florence Lee. This is an application for a special exception use permit to keep a maximum of 18 small animals such as poultry and mature cockerels when it can be demonstrated that adequate safeguards have been taken to ensure that there is no disturbance to neighboring residences of an existing one-family dwelling in an R80 residential district at 56 Lake Road in Katona. Is there someone here to represent the applicant or the applicant themselves?
Yes, me. Albert, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. You are Mr. Lee?
That's correct, Albert Lee.
Okay, and you, of course, reside at 56 Lake Road.
Absolutely, for the past 25 years.
Okay. Can you briefly describe for us what you are requesting of the board this evening?
Okay, I think all of the board members have received a 5-page letter addressing the board as well as photos of the existing poultry farm, if you so will. Basically, I shall be brief about it, since all of you have already had it. Essentially, we started this whole project, due to the pandemic virus situation in March, and we started to fence out the perimeter fencing for deers, and then later on when we completed that, we decided to say, hey, raise some chickens and ducks, which we did, and then we, as we go through the whole process, building a poultry fence, and then a duck house, and then they get, predators coming from the top and below and all that. So we decided to put a netting over the top of the fence. Essentially, this poultry fence and poultry area and housing area is in the southwestern corner of the property. I already sent all of you a Google map of where it is. It's a pretty heavily wooded area. You also will see the picture or photo from Lake Road itself. Obviously this is during the fall, and you barely see it from from Lake Road itself. So essentially, yes, perhaps the current code says that I cannot have any rooster, and this complaint came about, or this issue came about mainly because Mr. from 8 Manor Lane came out and told me about the fact that, it's illegal to have rooster in the town. Mr. Jones advised me to check that out, and I did. And then I tried to remedy the situation by putting a choker around the nice English bantam that I had, of which, and he congratulated me in having the fact that, you solved the problem. But that apparently that issue persisted a little bit. So I had a lot of correspondence with Denise, who was very kind, to advise me what to do as the next step. Essentially, there's a situation here. I mean, I'm looking to get at least, follow the code as much as I can, and also have the rooster as well, because as you know, rooster is essential in the hierarchy of chickens and they warn, other than the mating duties of a rooster, as Mr. Harden knows, it also warn about the predators and tell them to get, time to go to bed, blah, 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 and all the rest. So essentially, I would love to get at least 18 poultry in where we are, and perhaps a little bit more, and essentially that's the shortened version of what we plan to do.
Okay, let me see if I can summarize. From the reading of your letter, you currently have 17 varieties of poultry, including ducks, hens, and turkeys. Is that correct right now?
Correct.
Okay, and you're wanting up to 30.
Yeah, part of the reason why I asked for 30 is because, we are retired. I personally, other than being an avid gardener, this is a new hobby that I have found, and I like to experiment a little bit with, what kind of species that I have, all the various kinds of chickens and ducks and all. And at some point in time, I might exceed the 18, that the code has. When Ms. Sharma and Denise told me that I couldn't have more than 18, I had to get rid of a lot of chickens to comply with it. Unfortunately, there were like 9 maturing roosters that I had to, give away to some friends. But again, the point is that at some point in time, as I experiment all of this, I may not be able to comply exactly to the 18.
Okay, and then, so you're requesting 30.
Up to 30, yes.
Yeah, up to 30. You currently have 17. The code allows 18 maximum. You're also requesting 3 roosters.
Up to
3 roosters. Right,
Yeah.
right. Where the code does not allow roosters primarily unless they can be silenced in some way, which
Right.
can be
Yes.
quite a challenge.
Yes, I know.
My understanding is even with a collar on a rooster, it might reduce the sound, but I don't know that you're going to be able to silence them. Okay, but is that kind of a summary of what you're looking for here?
Yes, essentially, and you can see the survey I've done, professionally done. It comply, and some areas more than comply with the code, particularly with my neighbor on the north, 58. There's never an issue about whether the poultry housing or the fence is anywhere near that. Towards the east, in Manor Lane, the it's like 220 feet from the property line. Same thing on the south and southwest side. So I feel that all of this is more than comply with whatever is necessary that stated in the town code. I mean, even when we built the poultry fencing, the perimeter fencing, I made sure that there was a path, of 15 to 20 feet, whereby the deer can still continue to go past our property into other neighborhoods. I mean, I think the important thing is that for the board to realize that, we are very, very cognizant of the environment and the necessity to live with nature.
Okay, all right, thank you. Other questions from the board of Mr. Lee at this point?
Vic, if I could just clarify my reading of the code. So you're entitled to a total of 6. You can be granted a special exception use permit for a maximum of 18. So the 18 number is if you get the special exception use permit, right? You're entitled to 6 if you have at least 40,000 feet. You can get a special exception use permit up to 18. We're not, according to my reading of the code, we wouldn't be able to grant, even if we were to grant the special exception use permit, we would not be able to grant more than 18.
Well, first of all, I mean, yes, I understand.
Excuse me, just one second, Mr. Lee. Yeah, Tom, I would probably tend to agree with you. Yes. The special exception use permit, my understanding goes up to 18, and then it can be renewed annually, but automatically, but it's on a month-to-month basis. So it can always be rescinded if there's a problem. Right. That's my understanding. Go ahead.
Chairman, wouldn't he be asking for a variance, a special exception use permit and a variance?
I believe he would be, yes.
So I think so he's asking for 2 variances along with a special exception use permit.
Yes,
That's
I think
probably
he's,
right.
because he wants to go above the 18 and he wants to have 3 mature cockerels. Right.
Okay.
So, in this
Now,
case,
if I may say, the only other board member that has been through this is Victor at this present time. You've had applicants that have spent a fortune on lawyers to represent them to have a cockerel. They have spent a fortune on it. They brought in people that from 4-H club to speak about the cockerel, what their duties are for someone to protect the hens. Unfortunately, this applicant, the rooster did not do what it was supposed to do. And we've had other applicants with roosters, and on overall, we have turned them down. Okay. Now regarding the amount of poultry.
I'm sorry, Arnie, you're dropping out there. We can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm not sure I heard everything.
But not 30 in the sense of poultry.
I'm sorry, Arnie, could you just repeat the last 2 sentences? We couldn't hear what you were saying there. You dropped out.
Okay. Regarding the amount of poultry. Okay, I can live with 18 but not 30. And regarding the roosters, the cockerels, I am totally against that because of past history and the nuisance that it has created. Now, I do want to mention that I've lived in this town all my life. I grew up having chickens. And
I'm sorry, Arnie, we can't hear you. You're dropping out again.
Okay. Let's see. I live. I don't know where I should start again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know the situation, Vic.
Yeah, I think your position, Arnie, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that for past zoning board cases, which I can attest to, in all instances, we have denied mature cockerels due to the nuisance factor of them. And we've understood the arguments of, they're going to protect the hens and possibly keep the hens from fighting and all kinds of things, warn the hens. But a lot of that is alleviated by having a pen with a top on it, to prevent from hawks and things like that, and having an enclosed pen. And in all instances in the past, we've always denied mature cockerels. And I know collars can be put on them. It can reduce the sound somewhat, but I know it does not eliminate the sound. And then Arnie, I believe that's what you were talking about in regard to the cockerels, that you are against them. And then Arnie, I think you also were talking about the number of poultry requested here, 18 being
That is correct.
special use permit amount. I don't even know if you would go that high, but the applicant is asking for 30, which would go above and beyond and require a variance. And I believe that you are against that, if that's what I'm understanding.
That is correct. I would vote for 18, but not 30.
Okay.
And then just one other point.
Mr. Lee, I'll let you speak in a minute. Let me go to all the board members first. All right, go ahead, Tom.
Sorry, just one other point in the code. So the harboring of small domestic animals, which shall be limited to rabbits, pigeons, ducks, geese, and chickens, but no mature cockerels. So turkeys are not, the code is pretty specific about which animals it allows, and it does not allow turkeys. I just want to point that out.
Yeah. Mr. Lee has pointed out in his letter here, I'll give it to you what he says here. Small animals such as poultry, and then the definition of a poultry is domestic fowl raised for meat, eggs, and feathers, including chicken, ducks, turkeys, and geese. So whether they fall under that category or not, I guess would be a question for the board, whether they fall under poultry.
Right. So that would be that language is in the special exception use permit requirements. Right. These are the original language, which is chapter 170-11, does give a specific list. 170-11 3B does not just say poultry in general, but it gives a list: rabbits, pigeons, ducks, geese, and chickens.
Okay, 170-11. Okay.
B 3B.
Okay, thank you.
Category does turkeys fall under?
Right, I do see it there, Tom. Okay.
Yeah, that list will control over a dictionary definition every day of the week.
Right.
I think it'd be nice to hear what the public has to say, because there seems to be some people here either in favor or against this applicant.
Okay, so all right, so maybe we'll go out to the public right now, and then we'll come back to the board and the applicant, because we certainly want to hear from everybody here. So is there anybody online who wishes to speak in regard to this application? We'll take them, one at a time. Maybe just raise your hand so we can recognize you. Okay. Okay, I see.
Mr. Roy.
Yes.
Actually, my name is Gene Jones. That's just my email address.
Okay, could you just give us your name, your full legal name and address, and then, please tell us what you'd like to say.
Absolutely. My name's Gene Jones. I live at 8 Manor Lane.
Okay.
What?
I see you're right behind the applicant here. I do see that. Okay.
That's right. My property is the closest to the applicant, and we are downwind from him. I know he's probably going to have other people talk in support of his request. And I would like to say that I have no personal animosity towards Mr. Lee. This is just because I have a very serious problem with what he's requesting. It already has become a very serious nuisance in our life. I think the question here is not who does it not bother, but who does it adversely impact, and it's our property. Sometimes some of his poultry actually have walked to his deer fence, and that's only 15 feet from my property. The noise from his rooster has upset us. It's woken us up. It's intermittent throughout the day. My wife has a heart condition. Last year, she couldn't even sit out by the swimming pool in our backyard. Sometimes the rooster would suddenly start to crow and actually upset her and just kind of surprise her, and she'd go into AFib. We had to shut our windows because at 5:30 in the morning, sometimes the rooster would wake us up. Actually, I don't know how many ducks he has, Mr. Lee, but sometimes even at midnight, the ducks get agitated, a big bright light comes on, and I don't really watch his property that much. I just hear the noise. So there's been considerable noise issue from the animals that he has, and that was with only one rooster. The idea that he could have more than one rooster is pretty much unbearable to us. There's a lot more I could go into. In 35 years of owning a house, I've never protested anyone's application for a variance or anything. I pride myself in being a friendly, good neighbor. But this application is really a serious, kind of invasion of our privacy and peace and quiet.
Okay.
And it's not just me. People who have come on our property, such as maintenance people, have said, "What is going on over there?" So once again, there's nothing against Mr. Lee or his family. We also suffer from the pandemic. I've been out of work since the pandemic started, which means we're home more. And we would like to be able to sit in our backyard and have the peace and quiet that we had for the first 14 years when he was a very quiet, lovely neighbor. And we're in return also quiet neighbors. And I have to say, sometimes it just smells bad. And I think it's because we're downwind, the breeze off the reservoir sometimes carries the smell of the manure or whatever it is, the waste of the different animals before he gets time to clean it up.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Does anybody else wish to speak in regard to this application? Just raise your hand. Okay. Yes, Mr. Is it Damon Craig? Craig Damon?
Yes, Damon Craig.
Okay. Can you just give
let
us
me turn my
your,
volume up. I'm sorry.
yeah, no problem. Can you just give us your name and address? And then, please give us your comments.
So I'm Albert Lee's son-in-law, and I've been living at 56 Lake Road since March. We had to leave our apartment in the city, my wife and my daughter and I. And we've been pretty thoroughly involved in the raising of the birds and very much enjoyed it. I just want to say a few things. I guess the first would be to point out that right now, as far as my interpretation of the code goes, Albert's fully compliant. He doesn't have any roosters. Who's on a speaker? He hasn't had any since, I think, probably
October.
In
October.
So there literally haven't been any roosters on the property since then. He got rid of a number of hens. He lost a bunch of hens to predators. Right now, as far as I can tell, the only thing that is questionably not in compliance is the turkey, which, in my opinion, are considered poultry. When you go back to and other things, poultry is a singly standing word. It's not just enumerating the different types of poultry birds that are allowed. It's named different animals. He also has a piece of property that's over 2 acres, which should, in my opinion, allow him to have double what what the code would require. I've tried to convince him to get other animals such as goats and things like that, which are required by code, and he doesn't want to do that because he thinks it would be more of a nuisance. It's a hobby for him. He loves the birds. He's out there every day spending time with them. They have good lives. He cleans up after them all the time. He's collecting the eggs. He's eating the eggs. He has a multitude of different eggs. He's giving them to neighbors. The Santoros, I know, have enjoyed the eggs and like the bird. They come over and visit them. The same thing with neighbors to the south, who are closer to the poultry pen. And no one else has any complaints except Mr. Jones. As far as I can tell, that they have a super noise sensitivity issue at their property, because they also were upset when my now deceased dog was barking a lot. And in our opinion, he wasn't barking that much, but at the time being, Mr. Jones and his wife complained about that as well. So it seems like they have a super sensitive noise issue, and they, have an issue with animals being next to their property. And there's a lot of, there's other animals that aren't there anymore. In my opinion, the ducks, the geese, the wild ones that live in the reservoir are louder at night. I sleep with my bedroom window open, and I hear ducks and geese from the reservoir across the street that are louder than the birds that are in the pen. So I don't really understand what the issue is. And I just hope that Albert is allowed to keep the birds, at least the ones he has, and that, you know, this can be put to bed. That's all I have to say.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mr. Roy, we'll come back to you. I want to hear it from everybody first, and then I'll give you another chance to speak.
Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak in regard to this application? Please.
Hi, this is Joe Santor from 58 Lake Road.
Okay.
So we're
thank
the
you.
neighbors to the north.
Yes, I see
And
that.
we're, okay, great. So, you know, I guess I would just echo really everything that Albert's son-in-law said. We don't, same as others, we've been working from home and around a lot during, you know, since March of last year. Never really heard the animals. We think it's great to see them over there. You know, Somers does kind of pride itself as being semi-rural, and you know, nice to see people enjoying the outside and you know, not just gardening but raising a few poultry. It's you know, certainly it's been good for the entire family. And you know, there's other animal noises we hear. We hear dogs barking up the road. We never had any issue with smell or odor. I don't know, the wind always doesn't blow from Albert's property to the Joneses' property. It blows all different ways. And I would just mention, Mr. Jones, we walk around the block a lot, and there actually might be a house around on Manor Lane that has a septic issue, because I've noticed some odor when we're around there. So that's something you might just want to look into. Maybe somebody has a septic issue near your, you know, up Manor Lane. But I never have smelled anything coming from Albert's property as way of odor. And we're not impacted by any of the noise. Frankly, there really isn't any noise that we're hearing from the poultry. So we're very supportive of, you know, at least the 18 that is requested, or you know, going up to the full larger amount of 30. Would not have a problem with that.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Does
Thank you.
anybody else wish to speak in regard to this application?
Yes, my name is Joe DePaul.
Sure. Mr. DePaul, could you just give us your full legal name and address? And
Joseph DePaul, 1 Douglas Lane, New Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm the chairman of the ZBA in New Fairfield, Connecticut, and I assisted Mr. Lee in preparing his application. I also could attest to his fine character, and I'm sure that he would keep the hens and chickens under the proper control. You know, I think that you're being a little bit misled by the fact that Mr. Jones's house is really not that close. Mr. Jones mentioned 15 feet from the property, but I think the chickens, where they're located now compared to Mr. Jones's house, is a considerable distance. And I think, Mr. Lee, do you have any photographs of that, or is that shown on your survey?
we have
I
been
think
given
the board members have it.
Yeah, we have been given a Google sky map, so we can see the relationship of 56 Lake Road to 8 Manor, 58 Lake Road, and 54 Lake Road, so we can see it.
I think, can I interrupt you, Mr. Chairman? I think you also have, Denise should have given you pictures of the distances between 8 Manor Lane and the poultry fence itself. For example, it is 318 feet away from the property residence. It's the nearest. Did all the members have the exact distances?
Yes, well,
from the various properties?
we have the photographs that have been provided of the various views from your home. Yes.
Right.
I mean, I can't attest to the exact footage between the houses, but we can certainly.
I'm sorry.
Get that.
Albert, didn't you have a professional survey done that tells how far everything is away from the property line, and with measurements on it?
Yes. Yeah, you go from property and property lines and the residences itself. You would see that, you know, we are far more than in compliance with the code. I was taking a picture here, for example, you know, at the poultry fence itself, and I showed that the poultry fence, not even talking about the poultry housing, is 318 feet away. You might ask how I do that. I golf, and I have a scope that scope everything.
Right. I mean, we have a survey of your property and we certainly see the setbacks of the poultry enclosures from your property line. And we might be able to somewhat judge how far then it would be to the adjoining neighbors. Okay, we can.
Did you not get the photographs of that I sent together? There are about 10 or 12 of them.
I have all the photographs in front of me, yes.
Yeah.
Of your enclosure and the various views from your property, yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Maybe we could present the photograph that shows the view to Mr. Jones's house so we can have some idea how far that is away.
I don't know how I can load that up, unfortunately. I can show you here. Here. And then, can all the board members see?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah, it's
That's
350 feet away.
That's a considerable distance, nothing like 20 feet, more like 200 to 300 feet. Also, I'd like to point out that Mr. Lee has more than the adequate square footage and setbacks as stated in the code.
For a maximum of 18, he does, yes.
So the code talks about with area variances, whether the benefit could be achieved by some other method. And I'm not sure what the benefit of having cockerels is that can't be achieved by some other method. I understand that, you know, what it says in the letter here, but it seems like you can protect the birds, they can come in, and generally speaking, we have the codes put a pretty hard line in there. It hasn't said you can have one if it's quiet or anything like that. It says you can have none. And so I'm unless I hear something different about what the benefit is of having cockerels, I'm going to be a little stuck.
Okay. Does anybody else, I want to hear from everybody else first. Does anybody else like to have anybody else from the public who'd like to make any comments in regard to this application? I see other people online.
Can I add something here?
Mr. Lee, I'll come back to you in a minute. I just want to hear from the full public first, and then I'll let you speak again. And I'll also let Mr. Jones speak again. Anybody else wish to speak in regard to this application?
Yes.
Anybody new? I just want to go to everybody. Anybody new at this point in time? No?
Yes, I would. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes. What's your name, please?
It's Robert Ball at 4 Manor Lane.
Okay, you're at 4 Manor Lane. Okay. Yes, sir. Could you give us your comments?
Sure. I am not in favor of this. I saw the apparatus being built during COVID. We've all had our COVID projects. It's under my impression that he went above and beyond the code, and he should have looked into it at that point before this very large structure was built. So I feel there's some sort of duty there. If I were to add on to my house, the first thing I know, I would have to call the building department and get code and approvals and whatnot. And I think that was not done. So I think that was unfortunate. And then the nuisance for the neighbors, that has to come into play on this. I didn't realize what was over there until I kind of put it all together. And there is a noise nuisance in my opinion, but others don't seemingly have that. We all walk around the neighborhood, and that's when you start kind of putting it all together. At first, I had no idea what was in that structure. I thought it was like a children's playpen or to some degree, something like that. But now that we're all fully aware of the amount of animals that are in there, I would encourage the board members not to add on to this. It seems like Mr. Lee called it a zoo, and I don't think having a zoo in the neighborhood is appropriate for where we live.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any new callers or anybody else online have any comments in regard to this application? No? Okay. All right, let me go back to Mr. Jones. Did you have some additional comments you'd like to make in regard to this application?
Well, yes. First of all, Damon Craig seemed to imply that I have a noise sensitivity that's abnormal. I don't want to get into anything personal. First of all, we never did complain about his dog barking. When I was at the fence one day and Mr. Lee and I were talking, the dog barked at me and Mr. Lee said, "Don't to the dog, don't bark at him, he's a friend." So, you know, that was really the only time that anybody said anything about the dog. So I'd like to kind of put that aside. And I'd also like to say that, you know, we don't have a particular noise sensitivity. And I'm glad that at least Mr. Ball stood up and kind of affirmed what I've been saying, that this is a nuisance. This is a problem. We happen to be, and Mr. DePaul, you rightfully did say that my house is more than 20 feet from his, but here's what I said that you misinterpreted. I said that his animals sometimes graze that close to my property because that's where his deer fence is. His deer fence is less than 20 feet from my backyard. So yes, indeed, sometimes the animals do get that close, but the sound travels. And as far as Joe and Hope, that was the person from his neighbor on the other side of his street, the noise is blocked by Mr. Lee's house. And his house is considerably further away and the noise is blocked by Mr. Lee's house. So it doesn't travel to his house as much. So I think the real point here is that someone, a neighbor, a very close neighbor, is being really disturbed by the noise of his roosters. Yes, since October, we have not heard a rooster, but all summer long we did. And when we asked him to quiet the rooster down, he did try, but it was not successful because sometimes it sounded like the rooster was strangling. Sometimes it was loud. It varied all over the place because I don't think that collar really was working. So I would implore the board to hear our distress signal. We have nothing against Mr. Lee. We wish him well. But the truth is, if he wants what he really wants here, I think he needs to have a larger property in a farm area because he's basically created a barnyard and a small farm.
Okay. All right.
And I do have a question for Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones. Now, regarding the turkey.
Who is talking to me? I can't see.
I'm sorry?
This is
I wanted to see you. Oh, okay.
This is Mr. Guillot. He is a member of the board.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, regarding the turkey, okay, are they a nuisance too in the sense of sound wise when they gobble away?
I can't say that I heard the turkeys. I did see them. Yeah, they do have a bit of a whistle. But, you know, the real main noise problem were twofold. Agitated ducks, but more than anything, the roosters. The roosters were unbearable. The rooster was unbearable.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, has anybody found out what the
Oh, excuse me, let me say one
falls
thing.
under?
Someone in their family does chase the animals around with a loud whistle. I don't know who that is or why.
Can I respond to that, Chairman?
Okay. Yes. Why don't we go to Mr. Lee? Yes, Mr. Lee. Would you like to have
A couple of things, just to answer Mr. Jones about whistling. That's because I train the birds to come in. I let them out to the property. As I said, I have a poultry fence where they stay in all day. Well, they have the poultry housing. They have the poultry fence. They don't get out because if I'm not around, you know, predators come, whether it's the fox, the hawks, the bald eagle. So once in a while, not every day, 2 or 3 times a week, I let them out. Now, Mr. Jones said my property line where the deer fencing is to his property line is 20 feet. I can tell you exactly what it is. It's 35 feet. All right, to his property line, to the stone wall where his property line is, number one. Number two, okay, the whistling is normally done in the evening around 4 to 5 o'clock. I let the birds out, gets with the perimeter fencing, there's no way those birds can get anywhere close to his property line, let alone the house, right, number one. Number two, I use the whistle to call them out. If Mr. Jones is so sensitive to noise and a whistle, you should move to the farm, not me. This is, a subdivision within town of Somers. I'm sorry, Mr. Jones. Now, the noise of the ducks and the geese. The turkeys are so quiet. There's a misconception about turkeys being noisy. Turkeys, it's an American bird. And they hardly make any noise, right? Number one. The sounds that Mr. Jones may be hearing of quacking and whatever it is, could be from the mallards across the reservoir, right? Mr. Joe Santoros can attest to the fact that particularly during the summer and the spring and the late fall, you can hear the mallards, sometimes the geese, and once in a while, some white geese. There are approximately 50 mallards out there in the reservoir. Are we going out to kill them? No, not way. So what's the difference between that and some of the birds and the ducks? I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, you should move to the farm. Upstate is best. No, no. With regard to the other person, Mr. Rob Ball, yeah, I mean, look, it's a structure that you're coming through, you walk through, you may want to complain. You live in 4 Manor Lane, which is, probably way off on the other side. There are other people who walk by, who take walks like you do, who have complimented me on the rooster crowing. Yes, it was a mistake that I was not aware of the code, that I couldn't have a rooster. The minute that I found out that it was not legal, I mitigated the condition by putting a collar around it. Mr. Jones, you can't deny it. You wrote me a letter saying that I'm glad you found a solution. I'm sorry. And then you complain again. And then with communication with Ms. Shermer, Denise, thank you for all your advice.
You're welcome.
I got rid of all the roosters. The beautiful rooster that my granddaughter loved, number one. Number two, okay, I had some maturing roosters. There were 9 of them. And I got rid of them because they were just getting to be starting to crow. Now I comply with all the code that we have. I have, as a resident here of over 25 years, paid enormous amount of taxes. I have the right to live here the way I want it to be under whatever the code of town of Somers has. And I'm willing to comply with it. I finish for now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. Anybody else have a comment in regard to this? Let me go to Mr. Damon Craig, please, and then I'll go back to you, Mr. Jones.
Just very briefly, just to Mr. Ball's point, the hearing's really not about a structure because there isn't really any structure code issue as far as I know. It's more about the number of birds and what type of birds Mr. Lee's allowed to have. And I just know from experience from, being there on the property that there's a lot of other noise pollution that comes from the direction of that house. from that corner, which is usually loud music playing in the evening, especially during the summertime. And I don't really understand how, the sounds of, nature and birds could compete with the sort of like blaring stereo noise that comes from there in any significant way. And again, I also just wanted to mention that as far as the turkeys go, they really only can make sort of a very muffled noise. So I was just going to suggest, I don't know that my father-in-law is open to this, but maybe a compromise would be that he couldn't keep roosters, but at least he could keep the turkeys because they also play a protective role in the flock. They scare away the hawks that have taken some of the younger birds, and because they're large but quiet, they have an intimidating presence for other predators. So they tend to discourage raccoons and other predators from entering into the little pen where the birds live, which the raccoons can just rip through it essentially, and they do. Anyway, that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Now, I do have one question, because you use turkeys in the plural versus turkey. How many turkeys are there? I understood there's one, now there's more?
One female and one male.
One male and one female. Two.
There are two turkeys there.
One male, one female.
Okay, now is that part of the head count of 17 that you
Yes.
have at this present time?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
My understanding, Arnie, from the letter provided, they have 9 ducks of various species, 6 hens, 2 turkeys, for a total of 17.
I thank you very much, Victor.
Yep. Mr. Jones, did you have a further comment?
Well, I feel like I'm a bit under attack here. I was answering your question. You asked me if the turkeys bother me. I never complained about the turkeys in particular. So I just want to make it clear, I'm not a complainer at all. I'm really just a resident who wants to have peace and quiet in my backyard. And I'm concerned about my wife's health also, because the roosters definitely really upset her to the point of being dangerous to her health. So I don't want to belabor the points. It's just they keep on saying things about me or to me that really misrepresent me. I never complained to Mr. Lee before, and I certainly, Damon, I hope you're not implying that I play loud music, because it certainly isn't me that ever plays loud music.
No, I wasn't implying it was you. It was your neighbor to the south.
Yeah, and it occasionally does happen, and it is unpleasant, but there is nothing we can do about that. He's not breaking code by making that noise, and it does stop fairly quickly. So there's just nothing we can do. If we could, it would be wonderful if there was no loud music, but we do have remedies to someone having roosters and upsetting us. So that's all we're trying to do, is to minimize the noise. That's it. I don't want to say anything bad about you or Mr. Lee or anybody else.
So, Mr. Jones, I think your main complaint, obviously, number one, is the roosters.
Absolutely.
Yeah, less concerned maybe about the turkeys, and then I'm assuming you're also concerned about the number of poultry on the property.
Yes, I am. And although they're making it sound like it's just geese flying over the reservoir, it's never bothered us before Mr. Lee embarked on this project. So clearly, the noise we hear from the animals, and the ducks do get flustered or agitated at various times in the day. One duck, a couple of ducks quacking, it's cute. My wife actually said that when he only had 1 or 2 ducks, it was cute. But when you have a lot of them and they get agitated, the noise can become, annoying. So, yeah, so that's all, I wanted to say. And my wife did have open heart surgery, and she's recovering, and I'm trying to protect her as well. But I know that that's not the reason you're going to rule. Whatever the code is, I think it should not be expanded. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, all right, thank you. Could I go to Mr. Ball? I don't know if you're still there, sir, if you wish to speak again, but I'd like to know what.
I'm still here.
Yeah, I would assume, or maybe you could clarify for me, is your number one concern the roosters and the quantity, or or the turkeys? Could you comment on those 3 areas, what your concerns are?
Sure. first of all, the noise is likely coming from 6 Manor Lane. If the neighbors want to look up what that is, they can figure it out. But thank you for the concern, because obviously noise is something that's coming up on this conversation. My point was, if you're building a structure or if you're adding on to the family with a large amount of pets or animals, you may want to look into the code, and that was not done proactively, it was done retroactively. And that's my concern with this. And then now there's an ask for many more animals to be brought on. So thankfully there's a meeting to talk about this. I'm not against animals, as long as they can live in their own peaceful environment and we can all live in harmony, then it's fine. But as I am trying to do some projects on my house, I've been proactively calling and getting those codes from the building department. And that was my point in all of this, that should have been followed from square one or looked into.
Okay, all right.
I do have a question for Tom.
I would just like to thank you for hearing my concerns also. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Tommy, are you there?
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to some of the?
I'm sorry, Mr. Lee, just give me 1 second. Arnie, did you have a comment?
I'm going to ask Tommy a question. Is he there?
Yes, Arnie.
Okay, regarding the structure for holding poultry, is there any codes to that?
Well, our code requires housing for animals. Our code also has exemptions for dimensions of the housing, and I don't believe the housing that is there requires a building permit.
Okay. I'm sorry, Arnie, we couldn't hear you on that. You were falling out.
I just thank Tommy regarding the information he just gave us regarding whether or not the structure needed a permit or not. Did you hear that, Victor?
Yeah, Arnie, I think that Tom, the building inspector, said that based on the structures that are there, they do not need a building permit. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And Tom, is it your understanding that if the applicant wants 18, that a special exception use permit has to be provided for the 18?
He would, yeah, as discussed earlier, by rights with the size of the property he has, he could have up to 6 chickens. And if with the special exception use permit, the board deems appropriate, he could have up to 18.
Based on an 80,000 square foot property. Right.
Can I interrupt a little bit here? I thought that 40,000 square feet is for 6. When you have 80,000, you can have up to 12. And if you want to have more than 12 at 80,000 R80, you need a special use permit. Tom, is that correct? Mr. Tuma?
That's not my interpretation of the code.
Okay. I mean, you are the expert.
It's a minimum of 40,000 square feet. So there's nothing in the code that I'm aware of that permits more with more acreage, unless you get into a farm, which is 50 acres, and a large farm, 200 acres, something around there.
Right.
But the code allows, they've got a little over 80,000 square feet, and the code allows with a special exception use permit up to 18. So that's kind of
correct.
Our target number, so to speak. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to some of the comments that was made by, Mr. Ball and
Okay, yes, Mr. Lee, you can go ahead. And keep in mind, because I don't want to necessarily go back and forth all night here.
Right. I understand that. Okay.
I only want really new information so that we can, keep moving on.
Well, as the building inspector, Mr. Tuma, had pointed out that, I don't really need a permit for the housing structures, which accordingly must be a 12 by 12 square feet, 144 square feet. Each of those structures added together doesn't exceed more than 64 square feet. Mr. Ball since Mr. Jones gave me that I'm possibly in violation of the code, I've done serious study of the town code. So the structures that you're talking about, are actually fencing, and there's nothing wrong with the fencing as long as they are within the code. I'm far away from my neighbor's property line. With regard to the music, as Damon said, actually our neighbors along 8 Manor Lane, I would say 8, 10, and 12 Manor Lane do play a lot of loud music. In fact, just last week, they were playing tremendously loud music. I was out there. Of course, inside the house, I don't hear it. So, under this environment, people are trying out there to enjoy themselves and live. So while Mr. Jones may have a noise problem, yes, I sympathize with your wife's health problems. We want to live as well. All I'm requesting the board do is allow us to live the way we want to be within the town code, within the laws. You probably know I've been very, very forthcoming. As I told Ms. Sherma, I'm very transparent about what I have. Here it is, because I do not want this to be an issue again.
Okay, all right,
Thank
thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in regard to this application? Any other members of the public? This is our last call for anybody else from the public in regard to this application. Further comments by board members at this point in time? Questions of the applicant or discussions we want to have amongst ourselves?
Well, I can personally see, if everyone can hear me correctly, in the sense of a grand total of 8, and just allowing the 2 turkeys to be there until they pass on.
Do you mean 18?
I'm sorry?
Did you say 8 or 18?
18. If I said 8, I'm sorry. 18. Grand total of 18. Okay. That includes the 2 turkeys until they pass away, and not to replace the turkeys, since there's not a issue with noise.
Right. I mean, the way I kind of look at this is we have 3 issues here. The issues are, number 1, are we going to allow any roosters at all? Number 2, are we going to allow, how many animals are we going to allow? In my mind, 18 being the max. And then 3, are we going to allow turkeys to be part of the 18? So those are the 3 issues as I see it.
I didn't see any evidence presented that the roosters are required. I did see the letter, but I think there are other methods. Obviously, the birds can be brought in, they can be kept safe, and the turkeys might help mitigate some predators. So I didn't see anything which would want me to go outside of our code on that.
Well, I will say this part. We've had issues like that before, where the hen house was automatically on a timer to close it. So someone, again, brought in experts regarding the rooster. And one day, it just so happens that the so-called rooster didn't do what it was supposed to do. The hawk came down.
It's really hard to hear you.
All right, I wish I could do something better. Okay.
I mean, Arnie, I think I could summarize because, I think you're on the board with me when we've had these cases. But yeah, there have been arguments put before us in the past about the importance of the roosters, but, nothing which rose to the effect that would override us deciding that there should be roosters there. We always, in all prior instances, have decided that the roosters are a nuisance. And in all prior instances, this board has always decided not to allow them.
I also didn't see anything presented which would suggest that Mr. Lee shouldn't be able to get a special use exception permit for 18 birds so long as there's no roosters. So I think that's what I saw. You know, nobody said that he created a nuisance beyond what would be normal for having this amount of birds on his size property.
I mean,
Hey,
you know,
just to
right now.
interrupt, for a second, sorry, there's no YouTube comments at this time.
Okay. I mean, you know, what the code allows right now is up to 18, you know, animals. So the code allows up to, and no roosters. I mean, so if we're to follow the code, that's where we're at. And we could even do something less than 18 if we wanted. The turkeys, we're going to have to make a decision on that. What's that?
Someone's got two lines open.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean,
Mr. Lee, I just want to finish with the board members first.
Yeah,
okay, all right.
We've heard from you.
Yeah. You know, Tom, Melissa, what do you feel on regard to this?
I mean, you know, so I just want to back it up a little bit, right? So we keep talking about in compliance as if there's already a special exception use permit, right? So the property is not currently in compliance with the code. To be currently in compliance, they would have a maximum of 6. There's currently 17. And there have been mature cockerels, and when they were there, it was even more out of compliance. So really just what we're talking about here is, are we going to grant a special exception use permit for, which would allow up to 18? And that would not necessarily specify the mix of animals, right? So I heard some concerns over that 1 or 2 ducks don't make a whole lot of noise, but 18 ducks might. So in approving a special exception use permit for 18 birds, they can be 18 of any sort of birds, at least the ones that are listed in the code, which does include ducks. And there seem to be some noise issues with that. So that would give me concern even to grant the special exception use permit.
Okay, that's an interesting point. You know, if we do grant the special exception use permit, we could certainly specify the number of each species that is allowed, ducks, hens, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a consideration.
And we can limit the period of time before they come back in front of us, correct?
Well, with this my understanding from a reading of the code that this permit would be in place for 1 year and would renew automatically monthly unless there's an issue and we bring them back before us, and then we could rescind the permit. So if there is an ongoing problem, it could be rescinded.
Yeah, but I don't think we heard any testimony that this is outside the ordinary for special use exception permit. So, and the turkeys are not in the code, but nobody seems to have an issue with the turkeys, and maybe that's a little bit better than too many ducks. So I'm in favor of a motion which would support special use exception permit so long as there's no cockerels, no roosters, excuse me. You know, and I don't know if there's anything else we need to add. He has the distances. I don't know if there's any housekeeping things that we need to add, Tom, to your point. Maybe there's some trees or something like that, or plants, which could help. But nobody's brought that up.
Well, no one has brought up the actual number that they'd be okay with and not okay with. The ask right now is for at least 30. So are we amending this application for a special exception use permit for up to 18? Because we're looking at an application for up to 30, and that is in excess of what the code allows.
I'm going to assume we're going to, if we decide that we're willing to grant one for 18, applicant will make that application rather than have an application for 30, which will be denied.
Right. The applicant could just stick on 30 and then we'll vote yes or no. But yeah, from what it sounds like from the board, 30 seems to be a pretty strong no. So
right.
So we'll come back to that. So, all right.
And the application itself is for 18. Mr. Lee asked for 30 here tonight on the meeting, but the written application says 18.
Tom, the written application does say 18, but in his letter to the board, it does say up to
Okay.
30.
Okay.
Albert, do you want to modify your application to make it for 18?
Yes, I would modify to the 18 rather than coming back to the board again, which, is not necessary at this point in time.
And
The application itself is 18.
okay. And Mr. Jones, I see you raising your hand, and yeah, I would like your comment as to the number of animals we're talking about here.
Yes, and I want Mr. Lee to understand, because hopefully there won't be a lot of hostility after this is over. I have no problem with him having some chickens. The turkeys really didn't bother me. So if you could limit the number of ducks he has to, then, and it was a mix of chickens with a couple of turkeys and a couple of ducks, and no roosters, I'm willing to compromise. I don't want him to be unhappy. The fact that he's got a few chickens laying eggs and, giving them to other people, I have no problem with that. I never did. My picture just went. Am I still
Yeah.
there?
Sitting here.
Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can still hear you.
Okay, somehow the picture shifted, but so if you ask me, if you kind of did a halfway between 6 and 18 and ended up around 12 total with those criteria, I would have no problem, and no roosters, obviously.
How do I raise my hand?
There we go.
And
I think
Mr.
we're
Jones,
back.
what did you say as far as the number of ducks? Did you give us any number on that?
Well, I mean, if he had just a couple of ducks, it wouldn't be a problem. I don't know how many he actually has or has had at various times. Clearly, in the wintertime, when the windows are closed, we don't hear all those things. It's really an issue in the spring and summer when we want to be in our backyard, which is closer than our actual house to his property. But once again, I'm not trying to get him to have to give everything away. That was never my intention at all. I'm just trying to limit the noise, the annoyance factor, and hopefully some compromise can be worked out where everybody kind of gets what they need.
Yeah, because currently, Mr. Lee, according to his letter, has 9 ducks, 6 hens, and 2 turkeys. Just
So the number of ducks is kind of a problem, and the turkeys really were not a problem.
Okay. Okay.
I do have a question. What is the life expectancy of a duck?
Do you have any idea, Mr. Lee, how long ducks live?
About 3 to 4 years, depends, whether do you want the ducks to be productive or not productive? My answer may not necessarily be correct. I'm learning this whole thing since March. While I raised chickens and ducks as a child, as a kid with my mother in Malaysia, it's totally different here in the United States here. I think what I'm requesting is that the board gives me the flexibility. Yes, I hear Mr. Jones' dislike for ducks, which
I don't have a dislike for ducks, please.
Well, you're concerned about noise from the ducks, so I will try to accommodate his wishes, but it has to be over a certain period of time. Other than the fact that I'm going to slaughter them and throw it in the Emma reservoir, or I give it away. I rest my case for now. Thank you, board members, for first of all for letting me present my case and being accommodative, especially Denise, who has been very advising me back and forth. I'm sure she probably say I'm in pain.
No, and it was my pleasure.
Okay.
Now, I do have a question for Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, would you have any objection if we let those ducks live their lives out and he does not replace them? Can you live with that?
I will obviously, whatever decision you make, if you ask me, I would appreciate it if the number of ducks would be reduced. But, you know, and nobody's asking him to slaughter them. Actually, when I asked him the first time to quiet his rooster, he said he would, if he might have to kill the rooster. So threatening to kill these animals has never been any part of anything that I would want to be a part of. They can always be given away or found, new homes can be found for them. So if they could somehow reduce the number of ducks somewhat, then I would be fine with, you know, with that. So that would be my request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, all right, so,
Mr. Chairman, I will be happy to accommodate that, but what I'm requesting the board is not specify the numbers that I have of each one of them.
did you say you want us to specify or not specify?
Not specify. Do not specify.
All right, well, I'll have to see what the board wants to do.
It takes a little bit of time to, you know, to to achieve that.
Okay. All right, so I think the board, we're going to have some discussion or try to hone in and make some decisions here. Let me just do kind of an informal poll of the board at this point in time. Are we all in agreement that the roosters or cockerels are not something that we're willing to approve?
In agreement.
I agree.
All right, so that's one thing that I think we can all get behind. The second thing that maybe we'll have a consensus on is the turkeys, or maybe not, I don't know. But it seems that nobody seems to be bothered by the turkeys. So do we want to limit the turkeys or not allow them, or is that not an issue also?
If we're gonna allow the turkeys, I would allow these to stay, but there be no more turkeys. I'm not looking to expand upon the domestic animals definition in the code.
Okay, so that when these
I
turkeys,
agree.
that's it. Okay, that these would be the 2 turkeys that would be allowed. Okay. And then are we willing to go to the special exception use permit, the maximum of 18 for this property? Is that something that the board members are for or against? I'd like to just get a feel for that also.
I'm for that.
We'll allow it.
You're willing to go 18?
I don't have a problem going to 18. My concern is, and I can see how ducks could be a lot noisier than chickens.
Right.
My concern is limiting the number of the noisier animals.
Okay, so that's the last item, I think.
Right. I think if we were to reasonably cap the ducks at 1/3 of 18, that substantially reduces noise,
Okay,
at
so
least.
all right, so we're talking about 6 ducks. I mean, we got to start with some discussion. Does that seem to be a reasonable number of ducks?
May I speak again?
Yes, sir. I'll be with you in a minute. I want to just talk to the board and get a feel for the board, and I'll give everybody one more chance to comment. You know, I'm trying to feel out the board, and we're trying to, you know, reach a consensus on what we might agree with.
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking about what other animals are allowed that might be noisier than birds in general that, you know.
We're talking about this, you know, talk about or speculate on animals is not really what's before us at this point in time. So, if we are to grant the special exception use permit for 18 animals, the conditions we would put upon it, that there would be no more than 6 ducks, that there would be 2 turkeys and no further turkeys, and then the rest would be hens or other animals.
Let's just add geese. Let's just add ducks and geese.
Ducks and
that's
geese.
6 limit. So when we look at the number, the code defines rabbits, pigeons, ducks, geese, and chickens.
Mm-hmm.
So ducks and geese would be the 2 noisier ones. So let's put those together.
All right. And keep in mind, if we grant this special exception use permit, and then down the road, a year from now, you know, there's continued problems or issues or noise, we can always revoke it, and he's back to 6. You know, that's just the reality of this. You know, we're trying to have the neighborhood live in harmony here and within the code. You know, so
I'm sure Denise will inform me.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes, and you know, and keep in mind, sir, you know, keep in mind everybody online. You know, we all live in the town. mostly all volunteers on this board. Nobody's making a lot of money being on this board. And, we're following the code. We provide reasonable exceptions to the code. But, we are looking, the code is our law here. This is what we're supposed to follow. We provide reasonable exceptions, try to keep those exceptions to a minimum, and hopefully create harmony. We're not, we don't want neighbors fighting. We want everybody to get along. And sometimes we have to all compromise and try to come up with a reasonable solution. So that's what I think the board is trying to do at this point in time. So.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
How is this all checked on?
What do you mean, how is it checked on?
Well, for instance, how do we know that that's how many ducks he has and all that? Does somebody actually go count them or?
Well, what happens is, the board will render a decision.
Yes.
That will be issued. And then it's a matter of compliance. If someone believes there isn't compliance going on, a request can be made for a compliance officer to come out to a property and do an inspection.
Okay.
If somebody isn't in compliance and refuses to get into compliance, then they would be issued, a summons to appear before the, town judge.
Okay.
So, hopefully we don't get there. Hopefully everybody complies and we follow the rules and everything.
Okay.
That the board will decide on. So do we possibly have an outline for the board of a motion that we might make in regard to this? Are we coming? Are we in reasonable consensus? I think we were talking about no cockerels, maximum of 18 animals, 6 of which are ducks and geese. And
Well, no more than 6, right?
right, no more than 6, right? Up to 6. The turkeys, but only the 2. And the
No
rest-
replacement.
right, and no replacement on them. So that's where we're deciding right now. So, okay, that's where we're kind of at.
Now, I want to say one thing,
Yes, Arnie.
okay? Regarding geese, I can see there's going to be a noise issue.
Right.
So, and just one last thing, if I could, Victor. The
Sure.
code says something along the lines that if manure is to be stored in a pile, the pile shall not be closer than 100 feet from a property line. So it would be helpful for the applicant to attest to that or just make it a condition.
No, I can attest to the fact that it's more than 100 feet.
That's all I needed to hear.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
because
measured that. I knew you were going to come up with that.
yeah, there's a lot of compliance issues when you own animals, whether they be horses or all kinds of things.
Right.
Just because we're just touching upon these issues doesn't mean there aren't other compliance and rules you have to abide by, obviously.
Yeah.
Besides that, I think the board is all of one mind. We're close enough.
Right, so I think so. All right. I don't know if there's any further discussion, any further public comments, please. I'm asking not for people to repeat. I think we've heard everything. But does anybody have any further comments? I'm going to give a last call to the public for any comments in regard to this application.
I'm not seeing any comments here on YouTube
Okay,
from the public at this time.
okay. Thank you. Any further
Okay,
comments from
yeah,
the-
excuse me, Victor.
Yes.
Because I did make a comment, I don't know if the other board members heard me, regarding geese, because they can be extremely noisy.
Okay. And you know that
Regarding what? Can't hear you.
regarding geese. I mean,
Oh,
sir,
geese.
Mr. Lee, do you have any inclination or requirement that you want to have geese in the future?
Unlikely.
Unlikely. Okay. So, I mean, if we were to put a condition for the special exception use permit that there be no geese.
Well,
That's fine by me. I think there's enough geese at the reservoir.
Okay. Right. Okay. So, you know.
Sorry, one comment. So if you're limiting his ducks to 9, that means he has to get rid of, if you're limiting his ducks,
They'd be limited to 6.
then it means he has to get rid of 3.
Yeah, you have to, I need some time to get rid of that 6. I mean,
Or
3.
is there a way to put a condition where the existing ducks can stay, but they can't be replaced or something like that? Because they're there's an attachment to the birds because, they've been there for, since last June, so. with their name-
I don't know if the board is going to agree to that, because it still presents an immediate noise issue, and, if we're giving you a special exception use permit for 18 animals, we're kind of giving you a little, we're going to the max on what the code allows, so, we can put requirements on. So I'm not sure what the board is going to do. I'm only one vote of the 5 members online right now, so.
Yeah, I understand. I just still, it's just more of a sentimental thing from me.
I understand, sir.
Okay.
I would be okay if they could have 30 days or something like that. I mean, in the wintertime, it's not as much of an issue when we're in the winter now.
To have the 3 ducks given away or removed from the property.
Yeah, give them 30 days. I wouldn't want to make them do it tomorrow or anything like that.
Okay, any other further comments from the board? I think we probably should go to a vote on this. I think I know where we're going to go. Any further comments or questions, issues, any other discussion points? Questions?
30 days is a little quick.
We might,
Yeah.
yeah, we could make a proposal for more. I think I'd be open for that. The winter months are certainly going to be with us for another 2 or 3 months here, so.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think it's time to bring this to a vote. Can we have a motion as to the type of action?
I make a motion type 2.
Second.
Sorry, I've got paper all over here.
Take your time.
Okay, Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye. Okay,
Thank you.
can we have a motion as to the application and the conditions we'll put on it? And keep in mind, we have a kind of a lengthy motion here, I'm sure, because we got a bunch of things going on here. Would like to take a crack at it.
I'll take a shot if anybody wants to jump in and help out. So I'll make a motion to approve a special exception use permit allowing a maximum of 18 small animals to include ducks, chickens, and 2 existing turkeys, which would not be replaced, and that the number of ducks be limited to 6. And of course, requiring compliance to all other relevant code in the keeping of small animals, and that the applicant be given 60 days to comply with the requirement on number of animals.
How about the issue regarding cockerels?
And no mature cockerels.
Okay, just to be very specific that we don't. Does the rest of the board think we've covered the main issues there?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Take your time, Denise. I know there's a lot in there.
So I just want to make sure that in terms of ducks, no more than 6, the 2 existing turkeys, and then that would allow for 10 chickens, but no mature cockerels. And just as a reminder, we had a case a couple of years ago that a mature cockerel is now defined as being able to crow.
That's
It
correct.
used to say no mature cockerels over the age of 6 months, but then we learned through a few cases that they were cockadoodle doing at 2 months and 4 months. So we did make that change.
Yes, the board
I
had.
do remember that, and you're 100%
Definition.
correct.
Yeah, it's now officially part of the code.
Yeah, the definition of a mature cockerel, if it starts crowing, it's considered mature and it has to go.
Okay.
Leaf Town.
Okie dokie. Misty Polito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so the special exception use permit is granted with the conditions placed upon it. Sir, keep in mind the permit is for 1 year. After that, it renews on a monthly basis.
Is it 1 year?
I believe it's a
Yes.
1 year permit. I
It
believe
is 1 year.
it's a 1 year permit, but it renews automatically month after month. If there is a compliance issue, of course, we'll revisit this and changes can be made. So hopefully everybody is fairly satisfied with the board's decision here. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Stay
Thank you,
safe.
everybody, for participating. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Good night.
Take care, Denise. Thanks again.
Thank you. You're so very welcome, Mr. Lee.
Try to.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
You too. Take care.
Okay, so our meeting will continue with just a couple of more items. Has everybody had a chance to review the December 15th, 2020 board minutes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll just approve then by consensus. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Any changes? No? Nope. Okay, we're going to accept the December 15, 2020 minutes. I will make mention also that our next meeting is the third Tuesday in February, which is February 16th, 2021. You can check me on that, Denise. I think that's the right date. February.
I will double check that. And I think at this point, we have 2 accessory apartment renewals that are up.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to get them, if not both of them, at least one of them on the agenda for the next meeting. And that's all we should have.
Okay. All right. Sounds very good. I don't have anything else. Anything else? Any of the board members wish to discuss any other issues or concerns? Anything we have to talk about? Nope.
I'm good.
Okay.
None here.
All right. All right. Very good, everybody. So I think we're going to wrap up the meeting for this evening. Everybody have a good night. Stay safe and healthy. And we'll see everybody next month.
All right.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.